This story happened at a certain house somewhere in the Isan region. My name is JD. I am a young man from a neighboring country who had come to Thailand to look for work. Because of poverty, my life did not have many choices. I had been an orphan since I was young. My mother left me when I was little, and my father had died a long time ago. I lived with my grandmother and grandfather ever since I was a child. I entered Thailand legally through an employment agency, along with my girlfriend. During the first 3 months, my girlfriend and I lived very difficult lives. We slept at the factory, where fermented and pickled foods were produced, located at the back of the market. That was also the same place where the both of us worked. One night, while I was sleeping on a concrete floor covered with a damp tarp inside the workers' sleeping area, I had a dream. In the dream, I was sleeping inside a house that was not very large. I was lying on a soft, comfortable bed with a blanket that had been washed until it smelled clean and fragrant. It was completely different from the tarp I was using as a blanket in real life. It was a feeling I had almost never experienced before in my life, but not long after that, I suddenly woke up because a large rat had run across my leg. The next night, while I was sleeping, I had the same kind of dream again, but this time, something strange had changed. As I was about to lie down in the dream, at the foot of the bed there was a long-haired woman sitting on a dressing table, combing her hair. I kept having dreams like this often, and I regularly saw that woman in my dreams. Judging from her appearance and manner, she seemed to be a woman of a certain age, but she was still very young and beautiful looking. I began to wonder what exactly was going on, but I also had to admit that, even though it was a dream, I felt quite warm and happy whenever I was there. "Should we look for a house to rent?" I asked one day while we were working. I said this to 2 coworkers who were also from another neighboring country, and to my girlfriend who was sitting nearby. "I don't think we can afford it. I still have to send money back home," one friend replied, while the others seemed to agree because they also had to send money back to their families. They talked about how this was a city area and that rent would be quite expensive. The rent money could probably be turned into many meals instead. "Then should we at least go walk around and look first? Tomorrow is a day off anyway. We can treat it as a rest. We've been working for months and had barely had any days off. If we keep going like this, we'll die before anything gets better." I tried to persuade them in a relaxed way. After listening to me, my friends gradually began to go along with the idea, and in the end, they agreed. The next morning, the 4 of us showered, got dressed, and came out to stand in front of the market. "So, which way should we go?" one friend asked me with a laugh. The truth was, we had almost never gone anywhere except to work and at the back of the market. "I don't know either. Let's just get on whatever bus comes by," I answered helplessly. None of us knew where to go either, so the 4 of us got into a public bus without knowing the destination. We agreed that we would ride it to the end of the line and looked at both sides of the road to see if there were any houses for rent that were not too far from the market that we worked. The bus had only been moving slowly for less than 5 minutes when the old vehicle began making loud noises and releasing black smoke without any consideration for the passengers or people passing by. Finally, the bus broke down. Many passengers had to get off and wait for the next bus that would come behind it. "Looks like luck isn't on our side today," one of my friends said to me. "Maybe not," I replied, pointing toward an alley directly in front of us. The alley looked strangely familiar, as if I had seen it from somewhere before. "Should we try going into this alley?" I suggested. The 4 of us walked into the quiet, deserted alley. After a while, my friends and my girlfriend began saying that there was probably not any houses in this area. But because I felt as if something was pulling me forward, I asked my friend to trust me just one more time and walk just a little bit farther. Suddenly, after we passed a large tree, it was as if luck had finally sided with the four of us. The scene in front of us was a single-story house with a "for rent" sign in front. The house was not very large. It was white, and although it looked old, it seemed very livable. But the thing that gave me goosebumps was that when I looked at it from the outside, the house looked far too much like the house in my dream. "It's probably expensive. I don't think we can afford it," one of my friends said. Let me try calling the owner first," I said. I took up my phone and called the number posted in front of the house. It seemed like fate was on our side again, as the seller answered my phone call and told me the price of the rent. The home was shockingly cheap. The whole house was only 1,200 baht per month. If it was divided among the four of us, it would only be about 300 baht each month. But the auntie gave us a warning. She told us that, "If you live here, think good and do good. Bad people don't stay here for long. And one more thing, this is very important. Absolutely do not lock the back door." Since all of us were so happy, none of us really paid much attention to what she said. The following week, the four of us carried our few belongings into the new house. Inside the house, there were 2 bedrooms, so we divided them up with 2 people in each room. My 2 friends stayed in one room, and I stayed with my girlfriend in the other. As soon as I opened the door to the room my girlfriend and I had chosen, I could hardly believe my eyes. Inside the room, there was a bed and a dressing table. Both of them looked exactly like the images from my dream. They looked so similar that it could be called the very same room. I began to feel strange and wondered what exactly had led me to this place. Not long after we moved in, strange things began to happen. One night, while my girlfriend was sleeping in a half-awake, half-asleep state, she suddenly screamed loudly. She said she had seen a woman walk in from the back of the house, sit down in front of the mirror, then turn and point at her, telling her to pack her things and leave the house immediately. Since our lives were finally beginning to get better, I tried to comfort her and told her that it was nothing and that she was just probably tired. But not long after that, a similar incident happened again. This time, my girlfriend told me that she saw the woman staring at her from the window on the side facing the back of the house. The woman pointed at her with her hand while shouting curses and telling her to get out of the house. Many times when my girlfriend was lying down or doing something else, she would often catch sight of a woman out of the corner of her eye, sitting at the dressing table and combing her hair, making her panic again and again. Many times when she slept, my girlfriend also dreamed of that same woman walking in and out of the forest behind the house. Because I was beginning to have a headache from everything that was happening, I called the auntie who owned the house and asked whose dressing table and bed they were and whether I could return them to the owner. The auntie told me that they were old belongings left behind since the earliest tenants, probably more than 20 years ago. She told me not to remove them under any circumstances. She said to take good care of them, clean them properly, and then life would improve on its own. So I cleaned the room the way the auntie had advised. When I lifted the dressing table from its original position to clean the floor underneath, I found a large pile of hair gathered there. It was very long hair. My girlfriend's hair was not that long at all. Under the hair, I found a photograph. It was a couple's photograph that had been torn in half from the right side. The woman on the left side of the picture was wearing white clothing, She looked exactly like the woman I had seen in my dreams. The photograph was very old, so old that it had almost turned yellow. I decided to keep this matter a secret. That very night, something major happened. While I was sleeping beside my girlfriend, I dreamt that the woman in the photograph opened the door and came in from the back of the house. She walked over to wake me up and told me to go look beside the house immediately, while also telling me to prepare myself. Then it felt as if she kicked me hard enough to wake me up. I startled awake, and on the bed, I was lying there alone. My girlfriend was gone. Terrified that something bad might have happened to her, I grabbed a flashlight and walked out to the back of the house. But the sight I saw became something I never expected. My girlfriend was lying with one of my friends under a tree in the manner of secret lovers. I was shocked and devastated by what I saw. Both my girlfriend and my friend admitted that they had been secretly seeing each other and secretly having relations for some time already, but they said they had never come outside to do anything like this before, and they were also shocked because they did not know how they had ended up there. Behind the house was an overgrown forest with only a narrow path, and none of us knew where that path ended. Because my mental state was badly wounded, the next day, I made a firm decision. I went to quit my job and traveled back to my home country. I did not say goodbye to my girlfriend or my remaining friends at all. During the time that I stayed back home, I often dreamt that the woman in the photograph came to pat my head and comfort me. Several months had passed. Because my mind was still restless, I returned to that house again. Since I arrived during the daytime, I sat waiting in front of the house. I had already decided that I would forgive the two of them, and I would apologize to the other friend, the one who had not been involved, because I had run away without telling him it had not helped pay the rent for that month. Around 9 at night, the friend who had not been involved came back alone. When I saw him, I teased him, saying, "You've been working hard until this late now?" The two of us greeted each other, and he told me that the other two were no longer there. Only he was living there by himself. When I asked him about what had happened, I learned that after I had gone back home, the two of them began suffering from severe hallucinations. They were haunted by ghosts almost every night. Some nights, they would go and stand and dance in the forest behind the house. Some days, they would fight with each other for no reason. In the end, neither of them could stay there anymore, and the both of them disappeared from the house without going to work. "Oh, and I didn't come back from work today," my friend told me. "I went to his cremation. The foundation handled it. He was hit by a car and passed away. You should forgive him now. But as for your girlfriend, or your ex-girlfriend, I have no idea where she is. I haven't heard anything from her either. At the end of this month, I'm also moving out as well. I can't afford to pay the house alone." My friend's answer left me almost in shock from what I had heard. That night, I asked to sleep inside the house with him. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard a whisper beside my ear. "If you want to know the truth, walk to the back of the house. Just follow the path." The voice made me startle awake, sweat soaking from my body. I walked over and woke up my friend so that we could go search for the truth together. The two of us held a flashlight as we walked out into the forest behind the house. There was only a narrow path beneath the small tamarind trees, and we had no idea where the path would end. The two of us walked toward fearfully for about 300 meters before a rotten stench hit both of our noses hard. The smell made us stop in place. We shone our flashlights around, but we found nothing. So we continued walking until I tripped over something and fell. My friend shone his flashlight on it, and he nearly lost his mind and almost ran away. The thing I had tripped over was a human skeleton with no flesh on it, covered only by decaying white clothing. Before I could fully regain my senses, something rotten, wet, and yellowish began dripping down from above. When I shone my flashlight upward, I found that it was the body of the young woman who had once been my girlfriend. She had hung herself above us. After that, the matter became a legal case. I said that I didn't want to reveal too many details about the case, but in the end, the police concluded that the skeleton below had likely died many decades earlier. The cause of death was hanging. As for my ex-girlfriend, they also concluded that she also died by hanging as well. The two of them had the same kind of damage to the bones in their necks. Even more terrifying, they both used the same kind of rope. After the legal matters were finished, I traveled back to my home country again. Since the story had become so serious, I told my grandfather and grandmother everything about all the strange things that had happened to me while I was living in Thailand. Then I remembered that I still had the torn half of the photograph of the woman I had seen in my dreams. I brought it out to show my grandfather and grandmother as evidence. At that moment, my grandmother suddenly burst into tears until they streamed down her cheeks. At the same time, my grandfather got up and searched through a cabinet as if he was looking for something. When he handed it to me, what I saw gave me goosebumps while also making me feel both happiness and sadness at the same time. What my grandfather handed me was the other half of the photograph I had. It was a picture of my grandmother standing beside that same woman. My grandmother told me that on that day, my mother had argued violently with my grandfather and grandmother to the point that she ran away from home. She took with her the only photograph they had after tearing it in half. From that day onward, my mother never came back there again. It had already been more than 20 years. After that, I returned to Thailand once more. I asked the auntie who owned the house about the origin of everything that had happened. The auntie herself was still shocked by what had happened as well. She had never known before that there had been two people who had hung themselves behind the house. The auntie then told me the whole story. About 20 years earlier, the woman who was my mother had come to live in that house with a Thai boyfriend. Not long before my mother disappeared, she had gone to consult the auntie who owned the house about the boyfriend. My mother discovered that the man had already had a wife and children, and that he and his family loved each other very much. This made my mother extremely heartbroken, and after that, the auntie never saw my mother again. The boyfriend himself also assumed that my mother had probably run back to her own country. No one ever expected that she would be found again as a corpse in the forest behind the house. Today, I have opened a made-to-order food shop at that house and have managed to improve my status in life. In the end, I am now saving money to buy that house from the auntie, together with my daughter and my wife, who I met later on in my life. Wow, that was a really good story. I really enjoyed it, and it's the twists and it's the turns, and that ex-girlfriend and that friend were cheating, and then turns out that that person, the ghost that he kept seeing, was his own mother. Like, it's so interesting how fate ties them together. I don't even care if this was a fake story. It was very well written and very entertaining. By the way, guys, if you guys want more stories similar like the one I just told, please check out my brother-in-law's YouTube channel, Hmong Scary Translations. He tells stories in Hmong, so if you are a viewer that enjoys stories told in Hmong, please check out his channel. I've been helping him improve his videos and run his channel, so please subscribe to Hmong Scary Translations and let him know that you guys were sent by Hmong Chronicles. Now on to the next story. This is a story about something strange that happened to me. Something I had the chance to encounter myself and still cannot find an answer for, even to this day. The story goes back to when I was only around 6 or 7 years old. My family mainly made a living by farming rice. There were 6 people living together: my father, mother, my older brother, my younger sister, my grandmother, and me. My grandparents only had one son, my father, so almost all 10 acres of land belonged to him alone. But there was one thing I didn't understand back then. My grandmother would always say that we were allowed to farm only to 9 acres. The innermost area, where there was about a large square pond about half an acre in size, was absolutely forbidden. We were not allowed to go near it, and if we ever went around that area, we had to come back before sunset every time. Back in those days, when people went to work in the rice fields, they would often ask for help from others. Neighbors in the village would come to help one another regularly. On the day that the incident happened, while all the adults were working out in the rice fields, the children gathered and played together at the hut at the far end of the field. At the time, there were probably almost 10 of us. Since there was nothing to do, one friend suggested that we play hide and seek. After someone started counting, the rest of us children ran off in different directions. Because the rice fields were wide and open, everyone tried to run as far away as possible so that they would not be found. I also ran deep into the farthest field, a place I had never entered before. To explain the area briefly, the smaller fields were normal square plots where you could see far into the distance, but the fields farther inside were quite overgrown and complicated, with only a small path that led into the pond inside. While I was hiding there, some time had passed. Then my older brother ran in the same direction. I called out to him and told him to hide with me. Because the 2 of us had gone in too deeply, no one could find us. My older brother started feeling playful and went down to search for snails, crabs, and fish, thinking that maybe we could bring something back home and make our parents happy. Time passed and the air began to grow cooler. The sky also started getting dark. The 2 of us thought that it was probably time to go back, but at that time, something made both of us freeze and stop completely still. Something appeared on the opposite side of the pond. It looked like a glowing light, a round ball of orange light floating back and forth in a way that gave me goosebumps. No matter how I looked at it, it absolutely did not seem like a person. While the 2 of us were stunned, the light stopped still, as if it were thinking about something. Then it changed directions. Instead of moving left and right, it began floating along the edge of the dirt road around the pond. Judging by its direction, if we did not hide, that glowing light would definitely float right up to where we were. My older brother was already around 13 or 14 years old enough to begin understanding what it was. He quickly threw all the snails, crabs, and fish he had caught onto the ground, hurried out of the water immediately, and grabbed my hands while I stood, trembling with fear. But because he thought that if we ran far out into the open, we might be seen, the 2 of us hid behind the next dirt ridge instead. What I saw was the glowing light floating closer and closer, slowly. In the end, the light stopped behind the pile of crabs, fish, and snails that my older brother had thrown away. The atmosphere at that moment was completely silent. There was not even the slightest sound. Even breathing felt as if it might be heard by that thing. But suddenly, the sound of dogs howling rang out. I had no idea which direction the sound had came from, and at the same time, the glowing light began flickering on and off, making the scene so horrifying that I almost lost my mind. The glowing light I saw had no head and no intestines. Its shape looked more like a hand clutching a pig's heart. It was about the size of a football. Not long after that, something made my hair stand up again. Another glowing light appeared. This second light moved much faster than the first one and came to stop near it. At the same time, the sounds of dogs howling grew many times louder. By then, I could barely take it anymore. Luckily, my older brother still had his senses. He hugged me as tightly as he could. After the two glowing lights met each other, they changed from staying still to floating back and forth as if they were playing together. It looked as if they were eating the snails and crabs and fish that my older brother had left behind. There was also a horrifying sound, like something moving through the air, which made our skin crawl terribly. The whole thing went on for about 20 minutes. Then suddenly, we heard the voices of my father and the villagers who came looking for us. The sound made the noises from the two glowing lights go quiet. My older brother decided that whatever happened would happen. If we lived, we lived, and if we died, we died. He closed his eyes, covered me, and ran toward the sound of our father's voice. The moment we ran out, not even a second passed before a bright flash of light and a sharp, piercing sound swept quickly back and forth behind us. The lights shot up toward as high as the tops of the coconut trees. I could only cry, completely losing my senses, while my older brother almost could not move his legs. The two balls of fire flew back and forth until they nearly grazed our ears. Sometimes they flew high, sometimes low, as if they were trying to take our lives. Then, luck finally sided with us. A gunshot rang out. The shot came from the village headman, who had fired his gun into the sky. The two glowing lights disappeared, and my father then rushed in and held the both of us tightly. The villagers who had followed him were all shocked. Some were holding guns, while others carried torches. Some of them stood around me and my older brother, while another group forced themselves to go with the village headman and walk all the way to the other side of the pond. About 20 minutes later, the village headman and the villagers came back carrying the remains of the snails, crabs, and fish, which had been bitten and eaten until they were mangled. There were deep greenish marks, as if wild animals had chewed them up and eaten them for fun. There was a rotten smell and terrifying stains of blood. That night, my older brother and I were ordered to sleep in the prayer room. Some villagers stayed over and sat talking with my father until morning. The next day, the two of us had to undergo a ritual with holy water to remove bad luck, while also listening to my grandmother scold us because she had already warned us never to go in there under any circumstances. When I asked my grandmother what those things were, the answer I got was that she did not know either. In the past, my late grandfather had once been friends with a couple who owned the land next to the pond. They were quite close and visited one another often. But About 1 month before my grandfather passed away, he strictly ordered everyone never to go into that area again and to stop having to do anything with the two couples completely. When my grandmother asked him why, he refused to tell her. About 3 years passed, and we all thought that there was nothing more to it. Then, one night, while I was sleeping around 2 or 3 in the morning, I heard a strange, sharp, piercing sound, as if something were flying back and forth around our house. I quickly came out from under my mosquito net and looked towards the eaves of the wooden house. In the old days, houses often had ventilation gaps where you could see outside. What I saw were 2 glowing balls of fire floating back and forth. They were flying around outside the house. The memory from 3 years earlier came back to haunt me again. Everyone in the house ran and gathered inside my room. Because of the incident 3 years before, my father had been cautious. He had decided to buy a homemade gun, a break-action shotgun, along with consecrated bullets that the village headman had given him. After the 2 glowing lights floated back and forth in a horrifying way, one of them suddenly rammed into the window. It seemed as if it intended to break the window and force its way inside. In our panic, only my grandmother and father remained calm. My father aimed the gun at the window with no other choice. "Shoot it!" my grandmother shouted. Then my father's gun went off in a thunderous roar. The bullets pierced through the window, leaving so many holes that they could not be counted. At the same time, it sounded like a wild animal was being slaughtered, and it rang throughout the whole village. While the other glowing light swooped back and forth above the roof, the light became so bright that it could be seen shining through the old zinc roofing sheets. Another gunshot rang out, piercing through the roof, followed by a terrible wailing sound mixed with a woman's scream. Then everything, finally, grew quiet. Not long after that, the villagers and village headmen arrived because they had heard the 2 loud gunshots. Everyone sat together, talked, and kept watch until morning. As soon as the sun rose, the sound of the assistant village headman's motorcycle came and stopped in front of my house. "Headman! Headman! The 2 couples on the other side of the lake are dead. Their son just sent word. Out of nowhere, both of them screamed and writhed for about 3 minutes, then just died." After that incident, my father entered the temple, shaved his head, and ordained as a monk for about 4,000 days. As for my older brother, he became paranoid and easily startled. He could not sleep well, and he remained that way to this day. As for everything that happened, I still do not know how to summarize it. What exactly was the thing that we saw? Was it a pikrasu? And if it was, why did it have no head and no intestines? Why was it just a glowing ball of light shaped like a large pig's heart? And why did it follow us all the way home, even though 3 years had already passed since the first incident? Why did the couple die on the same day? Were those events connected? And what was the secret that my grandfather never told anyone? Okay, I think I know what happened, guys. The couples, they were practicing black magic, right? And that's why the grandfather found out and was like, "Hey, y'all are not to go over there." But for some reason, he just decides not to tell the whole family that you guys stay away from over there because they do black magic. But I guess if he told them, then there might have been problems. Maybe they wanted to retaliate, or they didn't have evidence or anything like that. But my guess is that the grandfather hung out with them, and since they developed such a good relationship, the couple told them that they do black magic or something like that, or showed them that they do black magic. And somehow the grandfather discovered that they did black magic, so he's like, "All right, y'all need to stay away from this crazy family practicing black magic. Anyways, I wanted to let everybody know that I am starting to do weekly live streams every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time. So if you want to see me play scary games or talk about scary stories, please join me on my live streams here on YouTube, 7 p.m. Fridays Central Time. And please remember, leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.